All right, so as I mentioned last time, we're going to be going over vertex painting today. It's one of my favorite parts. Can you guys hear me okay? All right, sorry. It's one of my favorite parts about environment art, mostly because it's that polish phase. You've got everything nice and clean in your level, and you can go in and just start breaking up that repetition. Um, those of you guys that have gotten started with applying materials to your environment, you can probably start seeing where some of that repetition is happening, right? So vertex painting is a great way to break up that repetition, whether it's adding extra damage or cracked tiles and things like that, or moss, dirt, all of that. So it's a lot of fun, and you can paint on it live and just kind of see those changes. And like I said, it just breaks up that repetition. And it's a lot of fun to do. Have any of you guys done vertex painting before? No? Okay. I know you. uh, so yes, it's the fun part. You're like, I've made it to the end. Now I'm ready to start, messing it up is pretty much the way of it. So I've got these slides for you guys, but I'd much rather go through the process with you again rather than read you a wall of text. You guys are more than welcome to look over these slides. They just kind of break down everything. So I'm going to go ahead and open up Unreal and just show you guys how to set that up, because part of your competency is going to be having at least one of those materials vertex painted in your environment, okay? So I feel like the screen behind me is just getting farther and farther away, but I was about to say that cord is super stretched. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Maya first. Like I said, Unreal, but I'm going to open up Maya first just to show you guys kind of the different resolution that you can have for your vertex painting material. What is going on? So I've got a scene that I've already created. All right, so I have different resolutions. You guys don't have to do all of these different resolutions. Really, the resolution is kind of up to you. But with the name vertex painting, something that you need to have is vertices. Now, most of you guys probably have relatively low poly meshes, right? Especially for your walls and such. You don't really have a need for all of that resolution. Now, if you're vertex painting, you need to determine, what level of vertices do you need, because the more vertices you have, the more control you have over your painting. But at the same time, you don't want to be wasteful either, this may be too much for what you need. And at a time, this may not be enough. And I can guarantee you this is never going to be enough, because it will only paint in the center and those outer edges, and you have very little control. And each time you paint, again, because you have very little control, it's still going to look repetitive. Does that make sense? And your whole point in doing vertex painting is to kind of break up that repetition. So I'm going to just export these three out so that way you guys can kind of see the difference in resolution. In fact, I already have them exported out, but that way you guys can see the difference in resolution and the effect of vertex painting based off of a different resolution. Now, again, I don't want to see anything going above this amount. I don't think it's necessary. I think this amount will give you a lot of control. And again, the whole point is not to be wasteful either. And notice on the back, I don't have that same amount of resolution because, again, I'm not going to see it. The player's not going to see it. I don't need to waste the resolution there. Okay, so that's all I needed for my, oh, also make sure, which you guys are all doing right now anyway, but make sure that you have UVs for these. Again, they can be overlapping. I don't know what's going on over here, but the back and sides don't matter. This is the section that matters. So again, make sure that you have your UV set up in a way that you can vertex paint on them. So now we'll get Unreal open. And my computer has not liked me having multiple software open nightly. All right. All right, and for now, I'm just going to continue using the first person. Again, you guys will be doing this in your own projects. Like I said, you can do all of your meshes this way to be set up for vertex painting, but you're only required to do one, okay? After you do it once, you might find you want to do it for more materials. You know, like I said, it's one of my favorite parts about creating environment art. And it's very simple to set up. When you guys get into LVL, Jen is going to show you guys how to blend even more materials to use for vertex painting as well. So I think you can get up to 5. I think is a way that she shows. Is up to 5 different materials. I'm just showing you guys 2. So let's do a new level. Do default. Hope you guys can see what I'm doing. So as per usual, I still like to do all of my housekeeping, putting everything in one folder. Alright, so I'll bring those meshes in first, and maybe I'll just get rid of this here, because I don't need it. And those, I believe. Okay, let's do more. And I'm going to uncheck import materials and textures because I'm just applying them manually and I don't have them set up in Maya, so I'm going to have those unchecked. Remember, you only want to have import materials and textures checked on if you're actually importing materials and textures that you've applied in Maya. Otherwise, it's just going to import a Lambert 1 and you don't need to waste the space for the Lambert. So give that a moment. And now it crashed. Okay. It's going to be one of those days, isn't it? Right, so now I'm not going to create all the folders because I'm going to be lazy at this point. That's always fun when that happens. It never likes me working on a second monitor for some reason. It never has. Do you have any examples of Vertex painted ones? Nope. I did a whole file cleanup last month, so all my Vertex painted ones projects are non-existent in Vertex. So let's just go back to this. And honestly, the first person doesn't really matter in this case, but you guys will all have first person on yours. In fact, just keep it consistent. And if it crashes again, I'll just restart my computer and well, hopefully it'll be fine from there. Those of you guys that are wanting critiques, make sure that you are uploading to FSO so I can download those here shortly. I'm still going to make at least one folder. Yes. No, it is not required to upload something if you do not want to. Where's my there we go. Okay. Don't go to sleep, guys. I know it's tempting. Okay, so let's try this again. So I'll start with the low, because again, I think it's just important for you guys to see the effects, the differences between low, medium, and high. And again, high is not a high resolution model by any means, but it definitely has more resolution than you would expect for just a simple mesh like this. Once I get these in the scene, I'm going to immediately save, so I don't have to go through this process again, just in case. So let's do a quick save. All right, so now I'm going to bring in my textures and just do my basic material setup. So I will use this. So I'll need my base color. This is the case where you will need a height map when you're doing vertex painting. The height map is required for this. That way it knows how much depth to use. So you will need a height map, which you guys should be in the habit of creating height maps anyway at this point in Designer. And if you're using anything from Substance Share, usually that'll come with a height map too anyway. And if it doesn't, you'll either need to generate a height map from that material or find a different material that does have a height map, okay? So make sure that you do have a height map. So I got those as my first material. Go ahead and create my first material here. And how you guys want to identify these is entirely up to you. Usually I just name it whatever my base material is, so it'll be like cracked ground, and I might add vert at the end, or I may just leave it, as cracked ground, or maybe I'll change it to like sandy ground, because that's when it would be vertex painting, is I'm adding in sand. Again, the naming convention is up to you, so long as it makes sense to what the material is. I'm not a huge stickler for it, as long as it's got the prefix of M, so I know it isn't, the material underscore, and whatever the naming convention is after that just needs to make sense to the material, okay? Let's go ahead and build this. And I'm just holding Command and clicking. As you guys have probably learned, Shift is not working on Unreal the same way it does in other software. So I'm just holding Command, just dragging these in. So I believe this is, what's the roughness? Okay, the height I'm just going to set aside for now. We'll come back to that later. And I will grab these materials and apply them here. So you can apply it this way where you're selecting the mesh. There's a few different ways to apply materials in Unreal. You can come here, and if you click on the material and this little button, that will apply the material. But if you also come to your mesh settings So the window here, if you select the material here, and where's that arrow at? Hit that arrow here, maybe? There we go. What this will do is this will affect all of the meshes that I have named as like SM_low. It affects all of those low meshes. So if you had one of your walls and you did it this way, it would apply the material on all of your walls without you having to go and drag and drop. Does that make sense? Okay. So it's just a faster way of doing it. Dragging and dropping works too, but again, you guys are probably trying to find more efficient ways to do things. And so it's a nice, fast, efficient way of doing this. So we'll go ahead and close that. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and bring in my second material that I'm going to be vertex painting. Like I said, we'll do, that's right. We'll do sand. Sand seems to be a good one for this. So I'll need the base color, the normal, and the roughness. I will not need the height for the second material. I just need the height for that first base material. And I'm just going to bring those in to my material. Ready? Great. And I'm just going to line these up right underneath the sections that they would match up with. You guys will probably see me hit spacebar a few times on accident from how often I work in Designer. Is it still node-based? Come on. I don't know why it's being so finicky. All right. So to get our basic setup for Vertex painting, there's a few nodes that we're going to need. So again, you want to make sure that you have at least a base color, roughness, a normal map, and a height map for that base material. And you want to make sure that you at least have your base color, your roughness, and your normal for that secondary material. Okay, those are those basic things that you need. If you're doing a metal, obviously you need a metallic map as well. If not, what you can do is just hold the one key, grab a constant, and just plug that into metallic. It's much cheaper than bringing in a black texture, right? All right, so we're going to grab a linear interpolate, also known as a lerp. So you can find it in this search category here, or you can hold the L key, which will bring you the linear interpolate. So the linear interpolate works as kind of like a blend node. So we need these. I do not know why this is being so sensitive. This is very frustrating. And I'm sorry to those of you that will be listening to this again and hearing me get frustrated in the video. So I'm going to, again, what the lerp does is it blends based off of the alpha channel, and we'll have a vertex color hooked up to that here in just a moment. So we're going to hook up our two base colors to that lerp. I'm going to do the same for these roughness and normal maps as well. So I'm just going to hold all, pop these in. All right, so the next thing that we need is a vertex color node. And what this is going to do is it's going to allow us to interactively paint in real time in Unreal. So vertex color. So this is what we're going to hook into the the alpha channel of all of these. So what we'll do is we will take, what this does is it takes the red channel and it outputs to paint the second material. That's kind of how the vertex color reads this. So we'll plug this in. Oops. Mouse is going so finicky. So I'm going to take the red channel of our vertex color and I'm going to plug this into the alpha of each of these layers. Now I'm showing you guys the basic way first, which isn't technically an incorrect way, but it's not the best way. But I do want to show you guys why I do my vertex painting differently than just this. But this is the most basic setup of vertex painting. Now I don't want you guys doing this version. I will show you the correct version here in just a moment. And I'll show you why I do it in a different way. So if I come back, go ahead and just do a quick save. Whoa! We hide the graph. Yeah, the grid. All right, so notice also that we've got some of that sand on there. It doesn't usually material. It usually floods it. I don't know how the base color. Ah, it's because I didn't put the base color up. So I'll say I see all the sand there, but I don't see all the base color. There we go. So let's apply that. Now for me, I don't like erasing the sand from it. I like to start with my base material and paint on that additional material. So we'll start with the high res and we'll give Unreal a moment to catch up. But to start vertex painting, you just come over here to paint. And like I said, I don't like starting with sand as my main material. Oh, there we go. So what I'll do is I will take my paint color and I will just drag it down to black and hit flood. And so that'll just get rid of that color. And so I usually only switch between black and white values. So white, again, if you think about it as an opacity slider, if it's or a mask, the black area is getting rid of or masking out, the white is painting on. So if you do somewhere in between, it's got a nice fall off to it as well. So I can start painting onto this. Now, like I said, this setup works, but notice that it's just sitting right on top of our material. And we have all these cracks and everything. It's just literally sitting right on top. So the way we're going to set it up is so that there's more of a fall off and it fills in those cracks first. So let me go ahead and I'm going to just flood this again. I'm going to do that for all of these because we're also going to start with the other ones so I can show you guys why we start with a higher resolution instead. So we're going to come back to our material. There's just going to be a few more notes that we need. So again, this is where we're going to make use of that height map. So we're going to put this guy just kind of here. We'll need a subtract node. And what that's going to do is it's going to subtract the height information from the vertex color. So subtract. So we want to take the red channel of our vertex color and we want that to go into the A section. And again, I mentioned that we do want to subtract the height information from our vertex color node. So we're going to take the height map and plug it into B. We're going to need a divide, and what this is going to do is it's going to control a fall off, so it's not like 100% or 0%. You'll have a bit more of a fall off to control work with. Sorry. So with the divide, we're going to take the subtraction into A, and we're going to take the green channel of the vertex color. So notice we're working with these different channels here. when you look at the Vertex Paint options, you have different channels that you can check on and off as well. So don't be afraid to play with those after you start Vertex painting. And then finally, we'll need a clamp. And again, what the clamp does is it keeps your values between 0 and 1. So grab that, and I will plug this into the clamp. And notice if I look at the clamp, I have my minimum as a 0, oops, my minimum as a 0, and then my max default as 1. So again, this is setting your clamp values, and you want them to be set between 0 and 1. And by default they are, but you just may want to double check when you get to it. So that's the most basic, that's the setup. Now we're going to take this and we're going to plug this into all of those office sections of those layers. So this is what our Vertex painted material will then look like. So we've got our height map here that's going to control that fall off. It's going to fill into the cracks first. We have our divide here, so we have a bit more fall off to control with. Notice that it didn't completely saturate the sand like it did the first time. It has more of a fall off to it. I'm just going to hit apply. Go back here. Now, I brought in these 2 or 3, I can't count, I brought in these 3 different static meshes with varying levels of resolution, and I just want to show you guys kind of why you want a little bit more resolution than maybe, you know, a cube would. So let me change this back to white, and notice that I'm trying to paint on here, but it's not really, I have to find where those vertices are. It's just not giving you a whole lot of control. And so if I go to duplicate this, I'm not going to have, sorry, my mouse is so finicky. I'm not going to have a whole lot of control. It's still going to look repetitive. Again, I just keep mentioning the word control. But the whole point in Vertex painting is to break up that repetition. So if I don't have a whole lot of control, it's probably not going to break up the repetition all that much. Now this one is probably going to be an okay resolution too to work with, depending on what we need. Let me see if I got it. It's driving me crazy. Yep, no, it's not the mouse pad. It's just being finicky. So I've got a little bit more resolution here. And I'm not sure why my mouse is being all crazy. So you still have a decent amount of control that you can work with. And I can take away from it as well if I want, or take away a little bit at a time. It doesn't have to be an all or none sort of thing. And as I mentioned before, you can play around with the different channels as well. Let me change my values. And it just kind of, I don't know if you guys can see that, but it affects the fall off, so it softens it a bit more. And then inversely, if I wanted to completely flood it, I would just have my red channel on and just build up on that. Now let me go to the higher resolution one because, like I said, I have a lot more control with that one. And as I mentioned before, what's really cool about the way we built this is it fills, notice that it fills the cracks first. And again, if I wanted to just flood those areas, and completely saturate it, I just mess around with those different channels, and then I come back over here, and I paint over it and get my fall off afterwards. So I usually like to paint with the red channel on first to just completely flood some different areas, and then I'll go in and I'll turn the rest of my channels on so I have a bit more of a fall off. And so also, let me go back to the nodes and just kind of show you guys what I mean by it breaking up that repetition. So I can come here and paint. Now let me hold clear end. See if it'll let me paint on both. My mouse will start working. So both of these selected, and I can paint on both of these as well at the same time. You just need to make sure that you have them both selected in the modes before you start painting. But you can probably say, this is the same material, but it looks different because of this vertex painting that we've done. So I don't know if you can tell, but this can be kind of fun, right? Afterwards. I remember back when I was a student, again, way back then, my teachers would always laugh at me because I would just vertex paint everything. It can get expensive, so that is something to kind of keep in mind. But if you're being optimal on everything else, like you're not using the 2K textures where you don't need them, or 4K textures, you're being smart about your resolution and whatnot, this shouldn't slow it down, okay? So, do you guys have any questions on the setup of vertex painting before we jump into critiques? It's pretty straightforward, right? So once I'm done recording, I'll turn off the recording, I'll start getting it uploaded, and you guys will have the video, you guys will have the lecture slides as well that will show, it goes over this entire process again as well. So you have the material set up. And then, again, this is the way that I want you guys to do it. I don't want you to initially just have the vertex color and plug it into the works. I want you to make sure that you have your subtract, your divide, your clamp, and your height map, okay? It just looks better. All right, so if you guys don't have any other questions, I'll go ahead and move on to the critique section of it, okay?